Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for joining me on this Friday afternoon for what is the third of my SharePad webinars. On the last two webinars, we had a bit of a brief look at filtering. In this webinar, we're going to look at it more in depth. So we're going to look at the different options we've got and how we can use them to basically return us a list of shares that we might be interested in actually recording a position in. So in SharePad there are three types of filters. And previously we've only touched on apply filter, but we also have the options apply quick filter and apply sector filter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at them in reverse. So we're going to start with apply sector filter, then we're going to look at apply quick filter, and then lastly I'm going to create a couple more filters in apply filter, pretty much in the same way as I've done previously. So apply sector filter enables us to restrict the current list by one or more sectors. So if we click on it, a dialog box opens up. We can see we have a drop down at the top and we have options to select industry, supersector, sector, subsector, and then we also have AIC sectors, which are for investment trusts, IA sectors, which are for funds, and also ETF sectors. So depending on the list that we are interested in, we can choose different options. If we were, for example, wishing to look at a particular sector for funds, we could select a funds list and use this to reduce the list to just those funds in that sector. In addition to this, we can also choose the option includes or doesn't include. And in that way, if we were looking at the FTSE 350 list and there was a particular sector we did not want to consider, we could opt to actually exclude it. I'm just going to leave it on includes for the moment, and I'm going to leave it on sector. And I'm going to select several sectors that have actually recently shown a recovery. A lot of sectors recently have taken a bit of a hit, I think, because of overwhelming market conditions, but there are some that are showing signs of recovery. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to scroll down our list and we're going to find 4 in total. So I'm going to select electricity, healthcare equipment and services, personal goods, and tobacco. So you can see at the bottom now it actually says criteria will match these 4 sectors. So only shares in my current list that are in one of these 4 sectors will be shown in the list once I click on OK. So you can see that I'm in the FTSE 350 list. You can see that on the dark blue title bar where my arrow is currently pointing. You can also see that the FTSE 350 button is actually white as well. And you can see that I have 14 shares that I can consider that are part of this sector. We could open this up if we wish to. We can go to other lists and we can pick LSE shares, for example, which is all the shares that are listed on the LSE, whether they're fully listed or whether they're in the A market, they will all be encompassed within LSE shares. And we select LSE shares, and now if we scroll down, there are a total of 72 shares in our 4 sectors. One of the useful features of applying a sector filter is that the table you are looking at doesn't change. Which means that at the moment I'm looking at the equities overview table setting. I could, for example, change to equities financial health and look at a completely different set of columns for the same list of shares. Which means if you had more than one table setting set up that you like to use to look at the performance of your shares, then you can switch between them while still applying the sector filter. It also means that I can select the first share in my list. I can switch to my green view, and we'll see that my green view is on the summary page on the financials tab. And we are now able to look at the fundamentals on the dashboard for the first share in our list of sectors. And we can see actually that this particular share is nearly all green. It has a lot of red comparisons to previous history. You can see the 3-year average figures in a lot of cases are red. But overall, it looks quite attractive. If I now press the space bar to move down my list of shares, even though I can't see it, we see this particular share doesn't have a huge amount of fundamental data, so we'll press space and have a look at the next one. Now, a lot of these instruments are going to be smaller instruments that don't have fundamental data or are being new listed and so don't have fundamental data. So we may have to do our research and our due diligence, but we are able to do so in a much more efficient manner. So I'm going to go back to my list view, and we'll see at the top of my list view I have my add criteria button. So I could add another criteria to this if I wish to. I have a keep button and I have my exit button. Now, quick filters and sector filters are both temporary. That is that as soon as I leave this, it is no longer saved. If I don't choose to keep it and give it a name, then it will be lost. And I will have to recreate it again from scratch the next time I wish to try and use it. Now, for me, for this sector filter, that's fine. I'm going to be happy to exit it. But in a moment, we're going to look at a quick filter, and then I will probably opt to keep my quick filter once I've created it. So if we exit my sector filter, it's no longer there. If I want to apply it again, I would have to go to filter, apply sector filter, and go through exactly the same process again. Instead of that, I'm going to look at a quick filter, but before I start, I changed my list to the LSE shares list. I'm just going to change it back to the FTSE 350 list. So I'm going to click on my FTSE 350 list button. And now I'm going to do a quick filter. So we click on the filter button. We click on apply quick filter. Now the difference between apply filter and apply quick filter is that apply a quick filter is not saved immediately. We can create a filter, we can then see if we think it's actually doing the job it's supposed to be doing, and then if we decide we want to save it at the end, we can then opt to save it by clicking on the keep button. When we actually use apply filter, it actually asks us to create a name and actually create it right from the outset. So they both do very similar jobs, but they just have a slightly different methodology about how they go about their business. What I thought I would do here is I thought I would actually build up a filter that tried to actually match some of the items on the summary page. So if we pick a random share in my list and I select my green window, actually I've selected an investment trust, so there we go, let's select an equity. We can see that we have various buttons on the dashboard. And for example, if we look at the ROCE down here at the bottom of the screen, we can see that we have a current ROC of 3.3%, but we can also see it shows us the 3-year average. Now that's the average of the previous 3 years. So if we are the current year, then it is the average of 1 year ago, 2 years ago, and 3 years ago, summed up, divided by 3. Now that's showing red because the current ROC figure is below the 3-year average. What we would like to see are shares where the current ROC figure is above the 3-year average. And so the company is making better use of its capital and getting better returns for it. So let's go back to our blue view by clicking on our Maximize List View button. And we're in our quick filter, and I'm going to click on Apply Criteria. And I'm going to start off by applying a filter which looks at that 3-year average based on the previous 3 years. So in the search box, I'm going to type ROCE. And we can see I don't want the rank option. You may recall me saying this in the previous webinars, I want the ratio. So we've got return on capital employed, ratio returns, and I'm going to select that option. So I want to look at a 3-year average, but based on the previous 3 years. So what I need to do is I need to select 1 year ago in the top left-hand quadrant, and then in the bottom left-hand quadrant, I need to select average over and then 3 years. So we're going back 1 year and then we're looking at the previous 3 years of average. And now I've selected that, I'm going to click on OK. And I'm going to put a minimum of 15 in my left-hand box and click on Apply. So we can see that what I'm doing is I'm saying that they, on average, have to have a return on their capital employed of at least 15% when you look back over the last 3 years. So if we have a look at the green summary view again, you can see that the 3-year average is 44.6%, which is exactly the same as I have in my column. But that's not quite doing what I actually wanted it to do. What I want to do is to look at the current ROCE value and make sure that it is greater than the 1 year ago ROCE 3-year average figure. And we do that by using combine columns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to my criteria here, or my criterion, and I'm going to select Edit. And you can see in the bottom left hand corner of the dialog I have combine items. And when I click on combine items, you'll be able to see that it allows me to select two values and choose an operator that does a mathematical calculation between the two. We can see that my current selection is populated in the left hand box, and we need to add an item to the right hand box. So I'm going to click on select, and when I click on select you can see that it's actually populated with my previous choices. So I've got the 1 year ago 3 year average. What I want is the current value, so I need to select most recent in the top left hand quadrant, and I need to select value of in the bottom left hand quadrant. So I've got the most recent value ROCE, and then I'm going to click on OK. So what it actually now says here is the 1 year ago ROCE 3 year average is greater than the current ROCE, and that's round the wrong way. I need the 1 year ago ROCE 3 year average to be less than the current ROCE. So what I do is I click on our drop down here and I select is less than, and then I click on OK. Now with this particular criteria, the response is either is it less than or is it not less than. So it's a yes or no. It's what we call a bit filter. So where it is less than, you can see I'm seeing a tick in the column. So when I click on apply, what's going to happen is only those shares with a tick are going to be shown. And now if I pick share at the top of the list and I go to my green view, we can see that indeed our ROCE figure, our current figure, is indeed greater than the 3 year average. And I can press space and I can look at the next share in the list, and you can see 14.1% is indeed greater than 13.2%, and so on and so forth. So all of those shares will definitely have an ROCE that's greater than the average. So let's try a similar thing, but this time what we'll do is we'll have a look at the forecast PE being greater than the 3 year average. So in this case, the forecast PE has to be greater than the current 3 year average. So it's just slightly different, but again very similar. So we're going to click back to our Maximize List View button, and I'm going to click on Add Criteria. Now when you click on Add Criteria, PE happens to be currently selected. So what we're going to do is just click on Combine Items, and on the left hand side I've got PE, but we need to change that. So we're either going to change that to our 3 year average and do is less than the forecast PE, or we can do our forecast PE is greater than the 3 year average. We can do it either way around, and either way around will work equally well. I'm going to do this the same way as I did the ROCE, so I'm going to make this one my 3 year average. So I'm going to click on the button. Now because we're looking at the forecast PE as our comparator, we don't do our 1 year ago 3 year average, we do a 3 year average up to the most recent value. So we don't change the top option, we leave that on most recent. Instead we come down to the bottom left hand quadrant and we find average over, and we do 3 years. And happy with that, we click on OK. In the top right we click on select, and we're on PE, but we don't want the most recent value, we want the forecast, so we choose 1 year forecast. We click on OK. So now we've got the 3 year average is greater than the forecast, and we want it the other way round. We click on OK. We click on apply. Actually, I've made a mistake there. We want the forecast to be less than the average. So, having realised our mistake, we can always edit our criteria. So we click on edit, rather than is less than, we change it to is greater than, we click on OK. And now we've got our 3 year average is greater than our forecast PE, and we can click on apply. So if we ever notice that we have made a mistake on our criterion, we can always click on the edit button and adjust it as needed, but we have to remember to click on apply to correct the change. So I'm starting to build up a reasonable selection of criteria, and I have the option now to decide whether I want to keep this or whether I just want to exit, and then if I had to come back to it at a later date, I would have to recreate it. So I'm actually going to opt to keep this. So I'm going to click on the keep button, and we need to give it a name. So I'm going to call this Dashboard ROCE and PE Comparison. I always feel it's good practice to give any filter that you create a descriptive name. You can create a description in it as well if you wish to. That option is there, but if you give it a decent descriptive name, when you come back to look at it, but be that within a week or a couple of months, you'll get a very good idea of what you were trying to do when you created the filter in the first place. So once I've done that, I'm going to click on OK, and that filter is now saved, and we can see at the top left here we've now got a proper filter name. Now, whenever I've looked at filtering, either in the early stages of this particular webinar or previous webinars, I've always been looking at equities. But equities aren't the only list of instruments in the program, and they're not the only list of instruments on which you can apply filters if you wish to. It's quite possible to apply a filter to gilts, to bonds, to investment trusts, or to funds if you wish. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a look at building up a filter, a proper filter for a list of funds. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to exit this particular filter, and I'm going to change my list. I don't want to be on the FTSE 350 list. I want to go to other lists, and I'm going to select the retail funds list. There we are. Now you'll see when I've selected the retail funds list, we've actually got a whole list of columns here that are specific to retail funds. So you've got their sector, you've got whether they're income or accumulation, you've got their Morningstar rating, you've got their ongoing charge. So we can filter on some of these if we wish to, and what I'm going to do now is create a filter that has a look at some top, see if we can identify some top performing retail funds. So I'm going to go to filter, and this time I'm going to do apply filter, and you can see when we do apply filter we have to give it a name to start with. We can see that our saved quick filter is actually now shown in our list, and we need to create a new one. So we're going to click on the new button up in the top right corner, and I'm going to just call this top performing funds. And there's no space there, so we'll put a space in there, and we'll click on OK. Now we've given our filter a name, we can click on OK, and we can set about creating our filter. Now you'll note that when we click on OK, we've lost those columns that we had that were in the funds list. So we're going to have to add our criteria, and then if we want to see any of the other columns that were there, we can then add them afterwards. And it's a rather useful feature of a filter that I haven't actually looked at yet, and I will do so after I've added a few criteria to this particular filter. So I'm going to click on add criteria, and if we want to look at top performing funds, one of the best things to do is to look at their Morningstar rating. So I'm going to click on funds and bonds, and you can see we've got various options that on which we can filter for funds, and one of which is Morningstar rating. Going to select it. There are no options. It is a 5-star rating, and so we're going to be looking for the best of the bunch. So we're going to be looking at those with 5 stars. So all we have to do is click on OK, and it wants our minimum value, and in this case our minimum is going to be 5. And we just click on apply. So there you go, already we have a list of 5-star rated funds. Now I'm going to look at some price performance metrics, just to see that these funds have been performing particularly well over the last 5 years. So I'm going to click on add criteria, and I'm going to click on price. And I need to look at the price change over a year, so I'm going to select the price change option, and then price change between 2 dates. And I'm going to go back to 2012 and look at the change between 2012 and 2013. It's already on show percentage change. We wouldn't want to use total return instead of price, I don't think, in this case. So we'll leave it on show percentage change and click on OK. Now I could enter my minimum value and click on apply, but I can also add some more criteria first. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to click on add criteria. Price change between 2 dates again. And this time we're going to do between 2013 and 2014. Just click on OK. And I'm going to click on add criteria. And between 2 dates. And this time between 14, 15. Click on OK. I'm going to click on add criteria between 2 dates, between 15, 16. Click on OK. Oh, you can see I made a mistake there. So we're going to edit that one. And I must have clicked the radio button by mistake. So 15 and 16, that's all OK. Click on OK. Now I want to add one more price change, but it's the price change from the current date to the start of the year. So I'm going to click on add criteria and do since date, select the beginning of the year, click on OK. So I've added all of my price change criteria, and now I need to give them all a minimum value, and I'm just going to make that 5% across the board. Now I've done that, now I can click on apply rather than clicking on apply repeatedly between each option, and you can see my list has been restricted, and I've also added the percentage change columns. And we could scroll down and have a look, or we could opt to sort by one of the columns should we wish. So we might want to have a look at the most recent price percentage change. So if I select that, so we can see our red dot, I can click on the sort button, and it shows me the best performer this year so far. If you're on a computer, don't forget you can also double click on a column and it will sort it, or if it is already sorted it will reverse sort it. So I can see the lowest percentage change in my list is 5.06%, which is as expected. It's just above my 5% minimum. So double click on name, sort me back by name. So one aspect of filtering that I touched on before I started to create this one, and that I haven't touched on before, is the fact that I can actually add columns to a filter that I don't wish to actually create a criteria for. So for example, I might wish to know what sector these funds are in without actually wishing to restrict the list by any particular sector. So what I can do is I can just go to add column up here on the pale blue toolbar, and I can find funds and bonds, and I can add IA sector, add. I might also be interested in looking at their ongoing charge. Again, might not wish to filter on it, but I might actually want to put it in there. So you can see when I clicked on add, it kept the dialog box open. If I had clicked on OK, it would have closed the dialog box and I would have to have reopened it. So I'm going to go and click on ongoing charge, and this time I am going to click on OK. And there you go, there's their ongoing charge. So I could now sort by their ongoing charge to see those that are going to be expensive or those that are going to be cheap. I could also sort by sector if I wish to. So they're all grouped by sector. So you don't have to just restrict yourself to those columns which you are using to reduce your list, to filter your list. You can add extra columns as well, and I think that's quite a powerful tool that bears some thinking about if you are creating filters for yourself. Next up, what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at a couple of filters from Phil Oakley's articles on our website. And I thought it would be a good idea to go all the way back to one of his earliest articles he wrote for us and pick up one of the filters that we created in that article and reproduce it during this webinar for yourselves. So the easiest way to get to Phil Oakley's website is to click on the settings button, and at the moment you need to go to the training zone. In the next release there will be a bespoke option for Phil when you can just click on and take you straight to his part of our website. But if we click on the training zone, then we can select Phil Oakley's section of our website quite easily, and then we can scroll down and all the way down. You may remember me saying before that there's well over 120 articles on the website now. So if I click on show more, we go even further down, all the way to the bottom, and you'll see that there were originally 4 basics that Phil wrote, and there is a basic entitled Choosing Your First Investments. Now, you can quite happily go away and read this at some point if you wish to. If I scroll down, eventually we'll get to a section SharePad and ShareScope can help you find shares that fit your rules, and we have a set of simple rules but with which to create a filter by, although they're not quite as simple as they may first look. So I thought, you know what, it would be a good idea to actually reproduce this as part of the webinar. So let's have a look at these in a little more detail. You'll be able to see now that I've zoomed in, if you like, that we have normalized EBIT, annualized 10-year percentage change. We have the 10-year average of the ROCE. We have continuous dividend payments for 10 years. We have an interest cover of 5. We have the 10-year average free cash conversion of at least 65. We have the 10-year average PE maximum of 20. And we have the forecast normalized EPS change percentage value with a minimum of 5%. So let's have a look how we create all of those in the program. So let's go back to SharePad. So we're going to create a new filter, just as we've done before. We click on filter, we click on apply filter, and we click on new. And this one we're going to call simple rules. And we're going to click on OK. And we're going to click on OK. And you can see that we're still in the retail funds list. So let's, for convenience, click on the FTSE 350 list. So the first option we've got is the normalized EBIT 10-year annualized percentage change. So let's click on add criteria. And we're going to search for EBIT. Remember, whenever you look at these, to avoid the ranks when you're filtering. You may specifically want to filter on a rank, but it's rare. I just want EBIT financial income statement. That's fine, so we're going to select that. But then we need the annualized 10-year percentage change. So we come down to the calculated as option on the bottom left here, and we select annualized percentage, and then we select 10 years. And when we're happy with that, we click on OK. And the minimum here was 5. I'm going to click on apply. I shall probably click on apply as I go along, just because it's a little bit easier to deal with. The next up, we had the 10-year average ROCE. So we've already seen ROCE earlier, so we go to add criteria. Up in our search box, we type ROCE, and we have return on capital employed. Remember, we want the ratio returns option, and we want the 10-year average. So we're going to go average over 10 years. Click on OK. And in this case, we wanted a minimum of 15. Click on apply. Next up, 10 years worth of consecutive dividend payments. Now, we've done this one in previous webinars. So we go to add criteria. This time we search for dividend, and we find dividends per share, financial, again, not the rank. And we want years of payment. Now, I've got this mixed up, and I've done years of growth by mistake. And if you do years of growth, quite often you'll get very odd results. So make sure you do years of payment. Click on OK, and select a minimum of 10. Click on apply. Then we have interest cover. So we're going to click on add criteria. And here I'm just going to search for cover. You can see we've got dividend cover, a couple of other options, and then we have interest cover, and I'll do the ratio, profit ratios. And there is no need to change anything. We just want the most recent value of. So we click on OK. And we have a minimum value of 5. Click on apply. Next up, we have the free cash conversion 10-year average. So we're going to click on add criteria. Type in free cash. Oops, cash. Free cash conversion, again, ratio. And 10-year average. So we come down to average over 10 years. And we click on OK. So this, we can see as we're building this up, this particular filter looks at long-term history of the company, and it's looking for the averages over a long 10-year lifespan rather than, say, a shorter 3-year span that we were looking at earlier. In this case, with the free cash conversion 10-year average, we want a minimum of 65. And then we're going to click on apply. There's a couple more to do. We want PE 10-year average. So we're going to click on add criteria. We're on PE already. We don't have to search for that one. We can go down to average over, and we can do 10 years. And we can click on OK. And in this case, we don't have a minimum value. We have a maximum of 20. Click on apply. And last but not least, we have the forecast normalized EPS percentage change. So we're going to click on add criteria, and we want EPS. So EPS financial, that'll do me. So we want the 1 year forecast, we want the growth over 1 year. So the 1 year forecast percentage change, we do 1 year forecast, and we do growth percentage 1 year. Click on OK. And that has a minimum of 5. And we click on OK. And once we clicked on apply, you can see that our filter is now complete. And you can see that we're actually currently sorted by IA sector from when I was previously sorting my previous list. So let's sort by name, just to fix that. And we're going to see that we've got 20 instruments that meet our criteria, and we could then give them further consideration. And of course the best way to do that is to just switch to our summary, and then we can have a look at their dashboard. And again, with this one, apart from the FCF conversion, which is a little bit yellow, everything else seems to be fine. Bundle seems to be a bit highly geared. as does Compass Group. And we can keep pressing space, keep progressing down the list, and keep having a look and make some decisions from there. So let's switch back to my list view. Thought we'd have a look at another one of Phil's articles. So if we go back to our website and we go back a step, we'll go to Phil's list, and we're looking for an article titled "A Quick Way to Find Potential Stock Market Bargains." So if I do Control and F to search and I type in bargain, and then we step up, there we go, a quick way to find potential stock market bargains. So save me scrolling all the way through the list. I just used a quick find on the web page to find what I was looking for, and now I can click on it and open up the article. Scroll down. Phil goes into quite some length. And in this part of it, we've got how safe are they? And he lists a series of options as to how to identify safe shares. So we have a look at that again. We have a look at that and a little bit of close up. We can see we've got debt to market capitalization that should be ideally less than 20%. We can see that we've got the pension fund deficit to market capitalization. This is the smaller the percentage the better, so it should be 10% or less. Interest cover, the higher the number the better, so it should be more than 5 times. Fixed charge cover, the higher the number the better, so it should be more than 2 times. And ROCE, the higher the number the better, at least 10%. So let's see if we can create this one in SharePad. So let's switch back to SharePad. And we're going to go to Filter, Apply Filter, click on New, and I'm going to call this one Safe Shares with a capital S. Now I could, in the description, put that it was from a particular article from Phil Oakley, but I don't think that's necessary. And I might add that in the new year we will be adding a lot of the filters that Phil has created in all of his articles into a revised list of available filters in the library. So that's something to look out for in the new year. So now I've created my Save Shares filter list. I'm going to click on OK. And we need to look at our first option. The first option is debt to capital. So we go to Add Criteria. You should be used to this methodology by now. Go to Debt. We find Debt to Capital. We find the ratio. So we can see Debt to Capital ratio, balance sheet ratios, not the rank below it. And it's the most recent value, so we don't need to change any of the options in this one. We're not looking back over any particular time or at any particular type of average. It's just we need to make sure that the current value is at least 20. So we're going to click on OK. And we're going to set our minimum value to 20. And we're going to click on Apply. Next up, I've got a ratio between the pension deficit to market capitalization. Now that's going to require a combined items column. So we're going to go to Add Criteria, and you should be familiar with going to Combine Items, hopefully. So we go to Combine Items, and we do Pension Deficit in the left-hand box. So we're going to go Pension. Oops. There we go, Pension Deficit. Easy option, only one choice. And we don't need to make any adjustments here, we just need to click on OK. And in our right hand box, that means we have to find market capitalization. So I'm just going to type in market. And you can see we've got market capitalization. And again, I don't need to change any of the options here. So I'm going to click on OK. So at the moment we've got the pension deficit is greater than the market capitalization, but what we actually want is the pension deficit, as a percentage of the market capitalization. So we're going to click on our drop down and it says percentage of right near the bottom there, and we're going to click on OK. And we needed to have a maximum of 10. I'm going to click on apply. Next up we've got interest cover. We did interest cover in our last filter as well, so we click on add criteria, and just like before I type in cover and I have the ratio, not the rank, and don't need to select any options, so I can just click on OK. And I can do a minimum of 5. We're going to click on apply. Next up is the fixed charge cover. So we're going to click on add criteria and select fixed to search for. Fixed charge cover is the only thing that comes up. Again, quite easy to find. Again, in this one, there's no need to select any of the options available, so we're just going to click on OK, and we want a minimum of 2, and we're going to click on apply, and lastly, we want the ROCE, but we want the least adjusted version. If I go back to the article, although it doesn't mention least adjusted when it says ROC, the higher the number, the better, at least 10%. If you look at the column that Phil added to the table, you can see he has the least adjusted ROCE. So we're going to use the least adjusted ROCE in our filter. So we click on our criteria, we do a search for ROCE, we select the ratio option. We have the most recent value of, but this time I'm going to select least adjusted. And we leave it on 7/7. And we click on OK, and we want a minimum of 10. And we click on apply. And there we go, filter created. And that took me about 10 minutes, I think. Maybe a little bit less, in fact, possibly less than 10 minutes, probably about 5 minutes. It's quite a simple one, that one. There wasn't a lot of options to consider. We just had to make sure we got our values right when we were setting up our criteria. Now we've created our criteria, and this is one based on Phil Oakley's article. So what we don't really want to do, unless we really want to play with it and adjust the values, and maybe we might want a minimum least adjusted of 15%, just to see what happens and how the list changes. But if we don't want to do that, if we just want to leave it as it is, we can lock the filter so that we can no longer adjust any of the criteria that we've added. And to do so, we can go to the filter button and we can select lock current filter, or we can go to apply filter and then we can select the filter in question, and we can use the lock or unlock button in the filter manager list. So I'm just going to close that. We're going to do this in the menu. So we'll go filter, lock current filter. And you can see we get a padlock beside the name up here in the top left. And just beside the padlock we have the button to expand and contract the criterion. So if we are happy with what criteria we have and we don't really need to see them, we can actually contract them. And that can be useful when you're trying to run SharePad on a smaller screen and you have quite a few criteria in your filter. The filter then obviously takes up quite a lot of the available screen space. So being able to contract it so that we can actually see more shares in our list is quite useful to do. And we can always expand it again if we want to, and contract it again if we wish to. You can see that now we've locked our filter, you can see that the add criteria button is greyed out. It's just a pale blue, that's a better way of describing it. And if we expand, we can also see that all of the values also have all gone all pale. We can't edit them, we can't delete them with our trash cans, we can't deselect them from their tick boxes on the left hand side, we can't do anything to them at all whatsoever. It's completely locked, completely safe from our meddling. If I go to filter again, you can see we have the option to unlock the current filter. You can also see that it isn't possible to delete it because it is also locked, so there's no accidental deletions going on with a locked filter either. If I go to apply filter, you can see we have several filters available, and you can see we have various options on the right hand side. I can copy a filter, so I can duplicate it. So if I wish to make a second one, or maybe adjust the values or add some extra criteria on it just to see how things would change. I can rename it if I don't like the name I've used. Maybe the name's too simple, so I might actually wish to rename it. If I go to save shares, I could choose to lock or unlock it, but again you can see that the rename button is pale and the delete button is pale as well, because it is locked, and so it really, you are prevented from doing any silly options with a locked filter. So it can be quite useful to lock filters once you've created them and you are happy that you don't wish to change them anymore. And on that note, that brings me to the end of this particular webinar. Just going to click on OK there. I hope you've picked up some ideas from what I've shown you today. If there's anything you want to filter on and you're not sure how to, don't forget you can always contact support. We are available well, Monday to Friday. You can phone us between 8 and 6. You can always email us. The email address is support@sharepad.co.uk. And don't forget to have a look at the training zone. A copy of this webinar and the previous webinars is available at the bottom of the training zone, as are many articles and videos that will help you get the most out of SharePad. Thank you very much for joining me. Have a good weekend, and I will hope to see you next time.